Good morning, everybody. We'll call to order our December 19th, 2017 regular meeting of the Mason County Board of Commissioners. We'll begin with our Pledge of Allegiance. Jeff Meyer, if you please lead us.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And if the clerk will please take roll.
Commissioner District 1, Randy Netherland.
I'm here.
Commissioner District 2, Kevin Schutte.
Here.
Commissioner District 3, Terry Drexler.
Here.
Very good. Takes us to item number 4. If the clerk would please report the correspondence.
Don Pagreba sent in an application for the Mason County Transit Authority Board. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security sent a reminder of the provision in our local flood damage prevention ordinance that requires an evaluation of possible substantial damage to buildings in special flood hazard areas in light of recent flooding. And the Mason County Auditor sent a district validation report.
Okay, thank you. Item number 4.2, we have a recognition of Jeff Myers from District Court Probation. I have a little paragraph here to read about Jeff, and then at that time I'd invite Judge Meadows up to make a few remarks and then present an item to Jeff in gratitude for his service. Jeff came to work for Mason County on January 2nd, 1996, handling both juvenile and adult probation. Came to the district court in 2006 to handle the adult probation caseload due to budget cuts in 2008. We were reduced to only probation officer, and Jeff handled the entire caseload until 2015, at which time a second probation officer was hired. In 2008, Jeff received the statewide recognition for the Misdemeanor Corrections Association as a Probation Officer of the Year. He has been instrumental in setting up the Veterans Probation Group meetings and has assisted thousands of individuals through the probation process. He's looking forward to travel and pursuing his passion for art, and he has been a great asset to the District Court Probation Office and will be greatly missed. Thanks, Jeff. Judge, if you'd please come up.
As Commissioner said, Jeff's been with us for a long time. 22 years is really a great stint for a probation officer in any county, but particularly I've been pleased and proud and honored to work with him for most of those 22 years. When he first came, he worked in the Juvenile District Court Probation Office. It was a combined office, and as was noted, it was changed due to budget issues, liability issues, variety of legal issues to a separated out district court and juvenile court probation. And so Jeff volunteered to come work for district court, and we have been pleased and proud. We're certainly going to miss him. And I think one of our biggest steps this last couple of years was starting the veterans group, because it separated out and gave this group of people some additional hope and help, which probation had not been able to do when we had only one officer handling 500 to 800 persons. Now we have 2 people handling that caseload, but now we're back down to 1 after next week. However, we're in the process of trying to fill his shoes. I don't know that that'll be possible. And on behalf of the Board of County Commissioners and District Court, I'd like to present you with this gift that we brought. Cassie?
I'd like to thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure working with Jeff over the past, however many years it's been. I lost track. It's been a long time. And he is going to be missed. And we are going to have a retirement party for Jeff at the office in the District Court Jury Room on December 29th from 2:30 to 4:30. You're please welcome to join us all and help wish Jeff a happy trips. Many of them.
And Carmela, thank you. Without you, he just could have done it all.
That's right. Thank you. Pleasure was all mine.
We'll miss you at the party. She can come back for him.
Congratulations, Jeff. Any commissioners if you'd like?
I would love to. Jeff, thank you so much for your work. I mean, the caseload this man has carried has been tremendous. I think upwards to 2,000 at one point. And in addition to bringing the veterans group, also brought something called moral recognition therapy or training.
I had the opportunity many times to sit down and watch the probationees go through that group work. And I tell you, there's nothing more restorative justice than to acknowledge in your heart the impacts of your actions on society as a whole. And that piece alone, I think, is something that I hope you're very, very proud of. And thank you so much for your work.
Jeff, again, I'll echo what Commissioner Drexler just said, but one of the best things, of course, is your work with the veterans. But I gotta say, it's really clear you definitely left this place much better than you accepted it when you came. You were a credit to this county, and we appreciate you and your services. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 5. It's an open forum for citizen input. If there are members of the public that would like to address the commission on items not on today's agenda, they can come forward at this time, and the chair will recognize them. Okay, moving on to item number 6. Oh, sorry.
My name is Mike Olson, 309 North 2nd Street. Last night at the city commission meeting, they were set to pass their budget when they were delivered some news from the sheriff that they were going to get an increase in jail bed space. They have a contract with the sheriff for 7 beds and have increased that over the years. Currently, the budget that the city gives the county for jail space is about $250,000. The budget increase was going to be about $50,000, and it was a take it or leave it thing. It wasn't negotiated. It was kind of slammed on them last minute. I don't understand the reasoning behind. I mean, I get the budget system, but why would you take a chance of losing $250,000 to gain $50,000 in light of an $11 million budget? It just doesn't make sense. And it also doesn't make sense the level of unprofessionalism that it was done by. I understand that there was no direct contact with Chief Moody, that it was delivered by a clerk, and when we tried, or when, I'm sorry, not me, when he tried to renegotiate, he was kind of shut down in the whole thing. The city residents are about 1/5 of the population of the county, and over the years that I've been here, the residents have been very good about stepping up and self-taxing themselves, namely a public safety sales tax, transportation benefit district, libraries, fire stations. We recognize when we need to step up, and I think that by doing this, you're only going to look bad in the eyes of the city residents. And I don't think that it's going to add at all to the camaraderie between the police forces. I think that it was a real mistake, and I hope it can be corrected, because I would encourage the chief to take the business away and take it elsewhere. It's going to hurt the city budget, but you guys are going to lose $250,000 out of it for a mere pittance compared to your $11 million. And I think that it's beyond budget. I think it was a political issue, and I'm really disappointed that we've come to that over this, that Chief Moody's done a great job for the city and the residents. And I was thinking that the county and the city were kind of really coming together. And I think this is a setback. Thanks.
Mr. Olson, if I don't mind, I'd like to explain something to you. This commission had nothing to do with it. Zero. No communication with us in regards to what to do, how to do it. Nothing at all. We found out about it right after they found out about it.
I understood that.
We met with
them. I
them,
didn't point that
and
out.
I'm embarrassed that that's even happening, and sad that that's happening. It shouldn't be happening. I agree with you that I think it's political. There's definitely a different way to do that. The citizens of Shelton pay taxes to the county also. We have 2 separate tax amounts that are paid. We have some that are for the road and some that are for the general fund. And the city of Shelton shares in that other half there. They're entitled to be treated with absolute respect. And I apologize for that happening. I'm not sure what to do about it at this time.
Yeah, I don't know either. Another point to follow up on that, I think it was maybe 6 years ago, I attended a meeting with John Tarrant, a former mayor. It was a different commission at that time, and he tried to persuade that commission to join with the city in passing a public safety sales tax, and they turned him down. And by all accounts, that would have added about $3 million a year for the last 6 years into the coffers. So, you know, I hope that the leadership of between you guys and the sheriff, we can kind of solve this. But you're right, I don't know what to do at this point. I just wanted to bring that up, that once this gets out into the citizens of the Shelton area, that it's a little damaging, I believe. So, thanks.
Can I respond to that? Ryan Sperling, Chief Deputy, Mason County Sheriff's Office. Thank you for your concerns. I think it's a little disingenuous you say that you had nothing to do with that. First of all, the sheriff came to Ryan Wheaton and Darren Moody over 6 months ago and said, this is on the horizon. We only charge you $80-some a day. It actually costs $102 a day, excuse me, for a prisoner to be housed in our facility. The city also doesn't pay for any medical. We end up paying for it, right? As far as after they've been incarcerated, if there's medical that is incurred, we end up incurring that later on. To say that we dropped it on them the last minute is not correct. Again, I was there when they went to them and told them, hey, this is on the horizon. You might be looking at this in the future. And it has to do with budget cuts. It's just that simple. When we cannot give the city a deal where we're paying actually $20-some a day for their prisoners because it's coming out of our budget when we're cutting our staff so far down. So it wasn't a matter of political, it's a matter of money. We just couldn't do it anymore.
I'm curious, Commissioners, were either of you aware that they were going to do that or drop that? Were you? No?
Good morning, Commissioners. Ken Van Buskirk from Belfair. Last Monday, 3 a.m. in the morning, I was awoken by a loud car, and 15 minutes later, my wife and I confronted and detained a prowler in our backyard. And I wanted to commend the Sheriff's Department and the Mason County Dispatcher because we had deputies who responded in under 10 minutes. And we're very concerned with some of the comments we've heard about regarding layoffs. I hope it doesn't happen. And I'd also like to thank the Board of County Commissioners for taking the 2018 Long Range Planning Work Program off the consent agenda today and postponing it until January. In my opinion, there's 500 staff hours allocated to 2 projects in that work plan that are pie-in-the-sky projects, staff hours that I think could be better utilized elsewhere. I have 2 pieces of information that I'd like you and the PAC to consider before that January meeting. One is an issue paper that was associated with the adoption of a public benefit rating system that the Puget Sound Partnership contracted a report on in 2014. And a second is a requirement that the county's legislative authority must appoint an advisory committee representing the active farming community. This is an advisory committee that was established in 2006, the last time the county looked at that public benefit rating system, but did not adopt. So I would hope that you would consider these documents if I can give them to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any others for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item number 6, which is adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move for the adoption of the agenda as presented.
And I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve or to adopt today's agenda as presented. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Moving on to item number 7, we have minutes to approve from November 27th and December 11th briefings, December 4th special meeting, and December 5th and December 12th regular meeting.
Mr. Chair, I move the approval of the November 27, December 11 briefing minutes, December 4th special meeting minutes, December 5th and 12th regular meeting minutes.
I will second.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes as presented. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 8, it's approval of our action agenda. Commissioners will read through the items on today's action agenda, at which time a commissioner or a member of the public can ask for an item to be removed for a separate discussion and vote. Commissioner Drexler, if you'd please take items 8.1 through 4. Commissioner Netherland, 8.5 through 9. And I'll do 8.10 through 13.
Mr. Chair, on today's action agenda, item 8.1, approval to spend $1,500 of lodging tax funds on the Waterfall Trail brochure. 8.2, approval to cancel the December 26, 2017 Commissioner meeting. 8.3, approval of right of entry agreement between Parsons, Scarzella, JV, and Mason County for parcel numbered 42024-13-00480 to perform civil and environmental surveys of Goldsboro Creek located within the property bounds. Item 8.4, approval to sign a finding of fact and face of plat granting the final approval of Lakeland Village, Section 14.
Mr. Chair, item number 8.5 reads approval of warrants, claims, clearing fund, warrants number 8053012 through 8053298 for the amount of $233,068.78 for a total of $233,068.70. Item number 8.6, approval of amendments to Mason County Land Development Planning and Building Permit Fee Schedules to include the assessment of non-refundable surcharge of 2% on county development permits and $5 convenience charge for permits that may be printed from an online source. Item number 8.8, approval of a resolution amending Resolution 60-07 and increasing the utilities and waste petty cash by $200. Item number 8.9, approval to set a hearing for Tuesday, January 9th, 2017 at 9:30 a.m. to receive public comment on the private line occupancy permit granting permission to run the water septic transport lines and power under the North Shore Road for parcels number 22218-14-00050.
Item 8.10, approval of the resolution amending the operating hours of the Assessor, Auditor, and Treasurer's Office effective January 1st, 2018. Item 8.11, approval of the Memorandum of Understanding with AFSCME reflecting the reduced staff hours in the Assessor's Office. Item 8.12, approval of the 2018 Court Commissioner Professional Services Agreement with Robert Sauerlander for Court Commissioner Services. The contract is for 24 hours per week, 0.6 FTE, with a salary of $86,860.68 per year. This is split between the Superior Court budget, 0.35 FTE, and Therapeutic Court's budget at 0.25 FTE. Item 8.13, approval to reallocate $15,000 in the public defense budget from salaries and benefits to operating expenses. This reallocation exceeds the authorization granted in Resolution 26-17 and therefore needs Commissioner approval. Okay, having read through all the items on today's action agenda, are there any items that a commissioner or member of the public would like to have removed for a separate discussion and vote?
Yes, Mr. Chair, item 8.10 for separate vote, please.
Okay. And any others? Okay, seeing none, I would entertain a motion on the remaining items.
Mr. Chair, I move for the approval of the action agenda items 8 through 1, 8, let's see, because 8 through 8.7 from my copy's been removed already, so 8 through 1 through 8 through .13 removing 8.10 for a separate vote and 8.7 because there will be no action on that item.
And I'll second.
It's moved and seconded to approve the items on the action agenda with the exception of 8.10 and 8.7. 8.10 will be removed for a separate discussion and vote, and 8.7 is delayed until January 2nd, 2018. Any additional discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to congratulate the Lakeland Village, the Andersons, on the final approval of Lakeland Village number 14. That'll be 25 new home sites. Very, very, very necessary, especially on a day like today where we're needing to cut expenses because these new homes are what build our tax base. And I'm very excited to see hopefully them move on to the next plat and provide even more homes and more revenues to the county. And on a day that we are cutting many, many budgets, I just wanted to explain to folks that item 8.1 It seems like a frivolous charge, but it is a coming out of a tax revenue that we cannot use for anything else besides tourism. So just in case people are wondering, why are we spending money on brochures when we're on a budget cutting time?
I also will comment on the same Lakeland Village one. That's pretty exciting. North Mason, people don't know, that's the first one in a long, long time for all of this area, all this county. So things are finally happening up there. As Tom Davison made comment of before, North Mason, thank you very much. They're stepping up. They're trying to make things happen. Let's keep it going. And it's in urban growth areas. Just so you know, we're not sprawling out in the rural areas, so don't get mad.
Michael, when's the last time, do you know off the top of your head, that we did a plat?
It was about 2004.
Okay, so we're going back quite a while. So this is it's an exciting thing to be a part of and to approve for Mason County's future. The other thing that, the other item on here that I think is very beneficial for Mason County is item 8.6, where we're adding a technology fee, which is maybe antithetical to some people's beliefs in terms of fees, but this is a great step forward because it means that we're one step closer to moving to online permitting. We've been working closely with planning staff and the leadership over there to modernize and make more efficient the processes over in community development. So this is going to make things much easier for the person at home who wants to make improvements at their property. If you're looking to expand a business or make changes to a business like that as well, it's just going to be more user-friendly. And so this is another very positive step forward for the county, and so I'm happy to see that moving forward as well. Okay, hearing no other discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion carries. Okay, moving on to item 9, it's an opportunity for department heads.
No, 8.10.
Oh, 8 point, sorry, Tom. Got ahead of myself. 8.10, approval of the resolution amending the operating hours of the assessor, auditor, and treasurer's office effective January 1st, 2018. Ask staff to brief that.
So with the changes in the budget for the assessor's office, the assessor asked to negotiate a reduction of hours for the staff. And that reduction is a 2-week cycle of 1 week having 32 hours and the second week of 40 hours. That was in lieu of actually dropping a salaried position.
Okay, questions for staff? Okay. At this point, I would entertain a motion. Oh, sure.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tom Davis, resident of District 2. You probably might have thought about pulling that off yourself because it requires additional explanation whenever you reduce the services to the public. It isn't so much that the treasurer or the auditor or anyone else, the assessor, wants this to happen. This is a direct result of the budget cuts. This is a reduction of services. So when we talk later on about whether or not we have a balanced budget, it's a balanced budget considering reduction of services, which means it takes away a little bit of that balanced budget phrase. I'd also like to like to add that when you work somebody for 32 hours, and I'm glad I didn't get a chance to read the resolution simply because this was put on at pretty late in the process, maybe even this morning. But the discussion was at the time, yesterday, I believe, that they were going to reduce their hours to 32, not alternating between 40 and 32. That was concerning to me, simply because it would be a 20% pay cut for these folks. If you give me a 20% pay cut, I'm going looking for another job, and I didn't think that was the intention here. But now what I understand is that it's going to alternate between 40 and 32. It's a little better. I don't know if it'll keep anybody from going to Olympia and asking for a better position or a more pay. But every time you every time you tinker with this, there's unintended consequences. And at this point, my understanding is that these offices will be open completely during a full work week, 1 week, and then the next week they won't be open on Friday. Is that correct? No. Okay, then please enlighten me.
So I was going to, Amber's here, maybe she could speak to the assessor's office hours.
So for our office, we are planning, we're asking to close to the public every Friday. And that would allow staff, because they're going to be working those reduced hours, and then we're also losing staff, that'll give them every other Friday to work in the office while being closed to the public and actually catch up on the backlog that's going to be created.
I see, okay. So it is, from the public's perspective,
But the other departments are not.
Right.
We're not closing on Fridays
right.
at all.
just the assessor's office
Right.
is closing up. All right, thank you.
Commissioner, do you have any other comments? Is that
Nope.
it? Okay, that was it.
I appreciate the staff stepping up and AFSCME working with us on these reduction of hours, and I appreciate the assessor being able to negotiate something that would have as minimal impact as we can on the county citizens while still meeting our budget needs. So I'll be voting in favor.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, at this time I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move the approval of the resolution amending the operating hours of the Assessor, Auditor, and Treasurer's Office effective January 1, 2018.
I will second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution.
I have some more comments.
Okay. Approval of the resolution amending the operating hours of the Assessor, Auditor, and Treasurer's Office effective January 1st, 2018. Any additional discussion, Commissioner?
The additional changes to the hours, just for the public's knowledge, this will start January 1. The Auditor's Office will be open from 9 a.m. until 4 p.m. So there will no longer be the 8 a.m. start and the 5 p.m. close. However, this was in an effort to stay open during the lunch hour. In the previous budget cuts, they had closed during the lunch hour, and that had a tremendously negative impact on the citizens. And so I appreciate the working around needing to meet the budget needs while working with the citizens in mind. The Treasurer's Office will be working open also 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. 5 days a week, staying open during the lunch hour, but only with one staff member, so it could get awfully busy there.
I just want to echo the comments of the citizen. We don't often think of it that way when we struggle to make sure that it is a balanced budget. It may be a balanced budget this year, no matter what happens, we're going to make sure it is, but it will be at the loss of services. There's no way around that. That's the only way that we can balance the budget, because there's no other money coming in. Revenue is revenue, but when you said it that way, that actually hit home a little bit. I just wanted to echo that exact same phrase.
Okay, any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? And the motion carries. Okay, now we can move to item 10, other business and opportunity for department heads and electeds to address the commission. Okay, seeing none, we can move on to, having passed the 9:30 time, we can move on to item number 10, which is our public hearings. We begin with item 10.1, a public hearing to approve the following supplemental appropriations and budget transfers to the 2017 budget. Supplemental requests, $10,000 to current expense clerk from Administrative Office of the Courts, AOC, $10,000 to current expense Sheriff's Office from Bulletproof Vest Grant, $5,000 to current expense Sheriff's Office from WASPIC Equipment Grant, and $2,186 to current expense Sheriff's Office from Traffic Safety Grant. Budget transfers, $1,600 from General Fund Ending Fund Balance number 001-320 to the Office of Public Defense 001-240. $20,000 from REIT 2 number 351 to Belfair Wastewater Sewer Utility number 413. $20,000 from the Veterans Assistance Fund Beginning Fund Balance to Veterans Assistance Expenditures 190. $4,500,000 refinancing of LTGO bonds number 403. $2,750,000 refinancing of LTGO bonds number 350, and $55,142 general fund ending fund balance number 001-241 001-320 for various unexpected sheriff 001-205 expenditures. And Frank, do you want to?
This is the public hearing to approve the final budget supplement request from the elected officials' offices and their departments for revenue that they have received in some cases, to expend those revenues that they received in, as well as supplemental expenditures, unexpected expenditures that came up during 2018. You identified them and read them. The only one that needs to change is the refinancing of the LTGO bond. That bond was not refinanced, so we don't need the appropriation for that. But the other LTGO bond was refinanced at a savings of about $615,000 through the term of the life of that bond. The impact to the general fund is $55,142.
How much again?
$55,142.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other questions for staff?
And we're removing the number 403, the $4,500,000, is that
No,
correct?
the $4,000,005 stays.
Okay,
It's a
the other one.
$2,750,000.
Got it, thank you.
Appreciate the assist. Sure, please.
Frank, on the $20,000 investment assistance fund, beginning fund balance, it might sound silly, but I'm assuming the beginning fund balance is the 2017 beginning fund balance.
That is correct. Yes.
Thank you. There's going to be some, I hope there's going to be some explanation on the LTGO bond on the 403. And I was asking the treasurer yesterday because we have our bond rating down-clicked from a AA- to A+. And how does that translate into cost to the county? Because when they do that, you normally wind up paying more for money that you borrow, and you have to pay out more on interest that you pay out to a bond.
Generally, that is correct. And I don't know what the calculations that were done, I don't know if there were calculations made to assess the impact of the downgrade, but the sale of the $4,500,000 did meet the Finance Committee's minimum requirement of a 5% leverage to the county. And I believe yesterday the number was that the savings represented about 13.6%. So how much of a basis point adjustment it ended up taking because of the reduction in the downgrading of our credit rating, I don't have numbers for that.
If I could. So I think there was also some issuance of bond insurance to help offset that, and so Lisa may have those costs. But part of it was that's why we didn't go out on the other bond, the $2.7 million bond. It didn't make financial sense. It almost met our 5% threshold, but it didn't quite get there. And then so that was the thinking there. That's why we delayed on it. And the other part of it is, honestly, was trying to do this before any kind of federal tax reform was passed, because there would be changes to the tax-exempt bonds, municipal bonds. And so I know Lisa worked very, very hard over the past couple of weeks to get this in before any of those changes would have an impact on our future ability to refinance.
If I may, the $2.75 million bond also had a call feature. That was through March of 2018. So that added a level of complexity to the sale of that bond, which was not marketable given the condition of the bond market over the last couple of weeks.
Brenda, did you?
Could you please post on the county's website the Standard & Poor's analysis and downgrade? I think that that's something as a voter and a property taxpayer should be able to see and become informed on where the county stands.
Sure. So would that come from the treasurer's office, or?
I have a copy of that. I can
Okay,
post it out there.
okay.
It does come from the treasurer's office.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, any other questions for staff? Did you have a?
No,
Oh, Tom. Yeah, I was just closing up questions, and then we'll move to comment. So no other questions? Okay. Seeing no other questions, we'll move to the public comment period, and if you'd like to make comment, please come to the podium and the chair will recognize you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Tom Davis again. This is very important. I happened to be watching on TV last week when Commissioner Netherland mentioned that our bond rating had clicked down one notch, and I almost fell off the chair because this is monumental news. I don't mean to overstate the negativity of it, but people need to know the seriousness of this when they consider any maybe tax increase or revenues in the future, because we're getting into dangerous territory. So I pulled up the bond buyer, which reported on the analysis that S&P had made on us. And for the sake of the public and for the public record, it's just a very small blurb, but I think it's worthy of people knowing. And this the title was Rural Washington County Takes a Rating Hit. And it says Mason County, Washington took a rating hit ahead of a $6.3 million bond deal. I think that part has probably changed. It said S&P also assigned the county a negative outlook, saying there is a 1 in 3 chance it could lower the rating further, potentially by multiple notches, within its 2-year outlook horizon if the county finishes fiscal 2017 with another deficit. They don't call it a shortfall here, they call it a deficit. That language has been corrected for several years. And the rating agency determines county finances are structurally in balance. Those are really operative words. And then they quote S&P analysts themselves. This was the reporter. And it says, quote, "The lowering rating reflects our view of the deterioration in the county's budgetary performance, leading to a significant reduction in budgetary flexibility." That's what their analysis was in a nutshell. How this is going to affect future decisions, I would hope it affects all decisions that happen from here on in to increase our reserves and show stability, and perhaps even address the structural problems of how we got here, or more importantly, how we go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Brenda Hershey, and I live in the Fawn Lake Precinct. My address is Post Office Box 1036. It's very hard to separate the public hearing 10.1 with this news on our credit rating affecting both 10.1 and 10.3, both public hearings. Very difficult. And I'd like to say that today I'm speaking as a private citizen and not for the League of Women Voters. In 2010, I participated in a budget study of the county budget. And then for a variety of reasons, I paid less attention to what was happening within the county finances. But more recently, I've been attending your 2018 budget workshops, meetings, and briefings. I've noticed that some things have changed since 2010, but I've also noticed that there are some things that are the same. Here's what I have learned. When we did our budget study, we said there are 3 ways that you can balance a budget. You can increase the revenue, you can decrease your expenditures, or you can dip into those one-time reserves, which is not a long-term solution. Well, the voters overwhelmingly rejected an increase in revenue. But as I've sat in this room here, I've noticed that you have found many ways to find revenue, to satisfy all of the demands for increasing or for maintaining higher expenditures. As late as yesterday afternoon. You can decrease expenditures, that's the second way. Well, you tried this. You came in and you said, let's do this 17% reduction. But then, as I noticed, everyone, all of the departments and elected officials came in and they played the budget game. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I've been doing budgets all my life, and people play budget games. One budget game that I saw in here so disheartened me, the first one I came to, so disheartened me, that I actually thought, should Dean and I be selling our property and finding some place else to live? This is before I knew about the bond rating going down. I was so disheartened, I thought, my goodness, our elected officials are not working together. The voters said no on increasing revenue. So that's why I kept on coming back, because I want to know more. Well, the third way to balance a budget is to dip into reserves. And when we were coming in here in 2009, 2010, that's what was happening. We were dipping into reserves to keep things rolling. That's when it first came up. Let's do this road diversion. That's when it first came up. Let's do a shift. Let's do a shift. And there was just this frantic thing. Let's do this levy shift. And then yesterday afternoon, as late as 3 or 3:30, we had the district court judge come in and say, if I don't get this additional FTE, I'm going to lose revenue. And so it was added back. And in fairness, the treasurer, the auditor, and the assessor, they're still in the same condition that they were in 2010, 2009. It's the same thing. They can't make a case that I've got to have these FTE, the additional FTE, or I'm going to lose revenue. But by gosh, we know we're going to lose revenue if we don't fund the assessor, if we don't take care of the auditor's office, those mandated essential services. If we don't do that, we're going to lose revenue. But they can't make that case, it seems. I'm very concerned. And I believe that we're going to have a rough year coming up. And I want to tell you, what I have seen the three of you try to do is to go out and find nickels and dimes to hold it together. When I came in here in 2009, 2010, I didn't hear people talking about $20,000. It wasn't small money like that. Now you're down to that. You're down to the nickels and dimes. We are at a point right now that I am very concerned that the 2018 budget that you're going to vote on today is not sustainable. So, I don't know. But this is where my home is. This is where I choose to be. This is where I choose to be. And I just ask, not just the three of you, but all of the elected officials and department heads, let's start working together. We are all in this boat together. I'm not leaving. This is where my home is. This is where I choose to be. People laugh at me all the time. They say, you got that southern accent. And you know what I tell them? I got here just as fast as I could. This is where I want to be. Let's start working together. Let's get together and figure out how to get Standard & Poor's to say that rural county really has its stuff together. We want to be with them. Thank you.
Any other comment?
Victoria Meadows, Mason County District Court Judge. Just briefly in response to Ms. Hershey's comments about District Court, we are at 1997 staffing. We are not asking or expecting for an increase in staffing. We had requested in our original budget funds for 2 additional clerks and a part-time court commissioner, which we have been asking for 10 years. District Court is a team player. We are not able to do the job we're supposed to do with the current staffing, but we plug through. I have an outstanding staff. Without them, I would not be able to do the job of 1.5 judges, which our administrative office of the courts have said we need for many years. So I just want to point that out. And again, I want to thank the commissioners for having heard me yesterday and again today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on item 10.1? Okay, seeing no additional comments on item 10.1, I'll close the public comment period and move to commissioner discussion and a possible motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and move for a motion. Move to approve the following supplemental appropriations and budget transfers to the 2017 budget with the exception of the $2,750,000 refinance of the LTGO bond number, fund number 350.
And I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the supplemental and requests and budget transfers as listed, with the exception of $2,750,000 for refinancing of LTGO bonds for number 350. Any additional discussion? No. Okay. Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion carries. Move to item 10.2, public hearing to recertify the county assessor to the county assessor the amount of taxes levied for county purposes and the amount of taxes levied for each taxing district for 2018. This is continued from November 28th, 2017, and I invite staff forward to brief.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is an item to recertify the county to the county assessor the amount of the taxes levied for county purposes and the amount of taxes levied for each taxing district for 2018. An increase to the current expense and road tax levies, property tax levies for 2018 may be considered. Pursuant to RCW 84.52.070, the Commissioners considered the certification of the amount of the taxes levied for county purposes and for each taxing district. However, the assessor did not have all the levy information, and the hearing was continued until today, December 19th. The Commissioners have chosen to recertify to the county assessor the amount of the taxes levied for county purposes, current expense, and for roads, and amend the resolutions that were adopted on November 28th. We have 3 actions or 3 motions that need to be processed in this action. The first is to certify the current expense levy, which is to increase by 1% the bank excess capacity and amend Resolution 75-17 and 77-17, and move to amend the resolutions to increase the 2018 current expense property tax by 1%, set the levy at $9,994,965.04, and bank excess capacity. There will be no levy shift. That's the first motion. The second motion, we have 2 choices. Basically, one, to increase the road tax levy by 1%, or to maintain the road tax levy and bank the 1% capacity. So the second is either to move to amend Resolution 74-17 and 76-17 to increase the 2018 road property tax levy by 1%, bank excess capacity, and set the levy at $10,721,216.71. This includes a diversion of the road levy of $2,160,000. There will be no levy shift. Or do not increase the levy by 1%, bank excess capacity, and amend Resolution 74-17 and 76-17 to set the levy rate, or set the levy at $10,616,013.65. This includes a diversion of road levy of $2,160,000. And again, there will be no levy shift. And the third motion is to certify all the levies of all of the taxing districts as prepared by the county assessor in the amount of the levies for county purposes and the amount of taxes levied for each taxing district for 2018. And you have an attached document with all of the certifications. So three motions, one in regards to the current expense. There are two options in regards to the road fund, and then one to certify all the levies back to the assessor.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff?
I want to verify the Public Works Department, our Roads Department, submitted a budget request that did not include a 1% increase, but
That is correct.
but wanted to bank that amount.
Correct.
But in addition, following that budget request, we are increasing the diversion by $200,000. So there will be
By 160,000.
By 160,000.
Yeah, increasing, an additional increase of 160,000, bringing the total to 2,160,000.
Is that accurate, or is it 106,000 plus the 500,000?
Correct.
So
So
it's
it's a
600.
The increase is 660,000 for a total of 2,160,000. But when we certified previously, the diversion was at 500,000. So the diversion, the increase in the diversion was at 500,000. So at this point, the additional increase in the diversion is at 660,000.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, questions? Tom?
Frank, the difference between the choice of whether we take the increase in the levy by 1% is the difference in, I assume, between the 10,700,000 and the 10,600,000. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So it's $105,203 and change that we're talking about.
That is correct.
Spread over county-wide.
Correct. Currently, roads has a bank capacity of around 841,000. If the choice is to not take the 1%, that would be added to that 841,000 bank capacity.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is there a plan for the roads to use this bank capacity at some time, at some point? Is there a plan out, over time? Where does that stand?
If I may, their longer-term projections do plan to use those bank capacities in successive years, as there are a number of larger projects that are coming up on their tip cap plan.
Could that be communicated to the public so that you know when this is going to be happening? What the plan is, at least?
Yep, I believe we can incorporate that into the tip cap analysis. The tip cap projects out a 6-year plan, which identifies construction costs, and we can modify the current method of communicating that information to include the cash flow planning of the roads fund to accommodate those additional construction costs.
That would be good.
I think, Loretta, did you have a?
Maybe just a clarification.
Sure.
Public Works puts together a 6-year tip that comes before the board every year, and included with that is a revenue expenditure analysis. So it's a program that lays out what our construction program is, and then what the revenues are to support that construction program. And we'd be happy for any public feedback about things that may make that more legible to the public. We'd be happy to do that.
Is not also the tip cap process a public process as well?
So let me clarify that as well. The TIP process is
Yes.
a public process. We also have a Citizens Advisory Committee, which is TIP CAP, that separately makes recommendations to the commissioners. So they are appointed by the board, review what the program is, and make their independent recommendations to the commissioners. The commissioners are the final authority approving the TIP.
And is the tip on the website at this point?
It is.
If I may.
Please.
Ms. Hershey makes a good point. I think we just adopted the 6-year plan a few weeks ago. Perhaps that hearing ought to include the long-range analysis of the fiscal sustainability of that plan. Generally, we try to keep that fiscal sustainability in at least the 2-year window. We know for a fact those monies are there. And then we go out more on an analysis, but there's so many moving parts, such as grant funding for some of these projects. So, and even something like trying to team up with the State Department of Transportation. So, but you do make a good point that each of those hearings ought to incorporate our fiscal and cash flow analysis in that 6-year period, as opposed to just the 2 years.
And I want to clarify that every time, if we're going to take bank capacity, we have a budget hearing. I myself, as you're aware, I'm not happy with how we did it the last time. I don't think there was enough public notice, and we raised the bank capacity. We raised our budget to expend that bank capacity. We're going to be changing that today, not to, I hope, expend that bank capacity, but there is a budget process every time we take it. Hopefully next time we just let the public know a little bit more and get that information out. This time it was decided that day before, so the public didn't get all that information, as they should have.
And in regards to your comment around the utilization of the bank capacity, as the minutes reflect, none of these have the levy shift incorporated in that certification, which was the mechanism of using that bank capacity.
But there is a budget process that we can't do it without it.
I'm just saying, just so there's no surprise, so that it makes it look like, we have a plan. We're working our plan. Not to say that things won't change, but so that people aren't surprised that these big projects are coming up.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing no other questions, we'll move to the public comment period. If you'd like to make comment on item 10.2, you can come forward to the podium and the chair will recognize you.
Well, Commissioners, Tom Davis again. Hopefully this is the last time I'll stand here for today.
Could have gotten you a closer seat.
The choice we have really in front of us is do we increase the road levy by 1% or do we not? That's my understanding. What happens or transpires after that, whether it's not going to incorporate a levy shift. But this would be the first decision relative to the last comment that I made. When we make these types of decisions, we need to keep our rating in mind and where that money is going to go. But we can't bank that money in any capacity unless we increase the levy shift. So I would hope that you do that. I understand people and people don't want to get taxed. I don't want to get taxed either. But we want the services. We don't want the taxes. It's just an untenable position. So many times we try to be populist, because people want certain things, but you're in a leadership position, you're not in a following position. You know what's best for the county. You have studied the situation. I would certainly hope that you increase the levy, the road levy, by 1%, and put it to. It finds its way to our ending fund balance. It would be the first step in a very long 5-year step in order to build those funds up so we can rectify our ratings again. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comment? Okay, seeing no additional comment on item 10.2, I'll close the public comment period and move to commissioner discussion and then a possible motion on 3 items before us.
Motion? Yeah, I'll go ahead and make a motion, motion number 1, to increase the levy by 1%, bank excess capacity, and amend Resolution 75-17 and 77-17.
And I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded to amend, to increase the levy by 1%, bank excess capacity, and amend Resolutions 75-17 and 77-17. Any additional comment? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And that motion carries. Moving on to our second levy certification for road levy. Would entertain a motion.
I want to have a little discussion before I make that motion. We have about 10% bank capacity in the road fund. And it's been suggested by constituents that as we move forward on funding our projects in the future, that it's easier for taxpayers to take the small hits as opposed to one big hit. I am in favor in taking the 1% this year to offset some of the cuts that will come from the increased diversion to the traffic policing, number one. And number two, it helps us go forward, hopefully taking that money, and I will work to next year take the monies and put it into what we call the Roads for Economic Development Fund. We have $1.5 million set aside for these future road projects. And so I would ask I would entertain some discussion about this 1% bank capacity among the commission here.
I would just say I think it would be irresponsible to not take the 1%.
To not take it?
Not take it.
I'm in favor of the 1% as well.
Of taking the 1%?
Of the 1%, our annual 1% that I have no issue with. You want to make it or you want?
I'd be happy to make the motion. Mr. Chair, I would move that we increase the road levy by 1%, bank the excess capacity, and amend Resolution 74-17 and 76-17.
I'll second.
So moved and seconded to increase the levy by 1%, bank excess capacity, and amend Resolution 74-17 and 76-17. Any additional discussion?
Yes. This is actually a really good day, because you may not realize what's happening, but this is actually a rescission of the tax increase. The people did speak, as was presented earlier, and they told us not to increase our taxes, overwhelmingly, 67%. And there was a vote several weeks back where it was agreed to take 9.79% of an increase in the road fund, so it could be leveraged or rated, whatever word you want to use, to go to the general fund. I was against that at the time, but today, I think with the help of all the community, explaining it to commission, I think this is a good thing to come back to it. I am not in favor of the increase in the road levy diversion. The reason why is not because I don't want the sheriff's department to have more, but if we're going to increase that diversion or do anything in that road fund, it should be going to our ending fund balance right now. We're in a situation where we need to build that big and quick to make sure and ensure that we do not get another drop in our ratings. But with that, I'm going to be voting in favor of this because it's a small thing in comparison to having that tax increase dropped off of our books. So we'll be going back down to our annual 1%, which is well within what we normally do anyway, and put that bank capacity in for future roads and for things that may be needed in the future. So I will be voting in favor of it with the 1%.
Okay, thank you. Any comment?
Yes, I am in favor of increasing the diversion as a one-year stopgap measure. These, as we've discussed over these past few weeks, these are drastic cuts. And if we can minimize the impact with the anticipation of potentially future new revenues, but for me, more importantly, in the sheriff's department, I've had some discussion with some of the staff. We have some very young recruits who are very promising, and we have some folks that we may have some natural attrition over next year. And so this, I'm hoping, depending on how the sheriff takes this extra money and how he uses it, I'm hoping that we can preserve some of the positions that are slated for cuts in anticipation of maybe having some natural attrition in the next year. And so that's my 1 year in favor of increasing the diversion.
Okay, thank you. So I'll also be supporting this road levy, but in probably a similar but different way than the rest of the commission. I did support using the levy shift when I voted in favor of it at the end of November. I thought it was the right idea then. I think it's the right idea now. I am voting, though, in favor of this to ensure that the traffic diversion dollars are there and that they stay. This has been a much, I think, maligned process on the road levy bank capacity. You know, and I think when I look at the tools that I have in front of me, the tools that are available to me in order to help stabilize the county, stabilize the county's finances, I thought this was an appropriate tool. I know that isn't a sentiment shared on the commission, and I respect the vote against that. However, I gave my word that I voted for this, and I'm not gonna back away from thinking that that was the right decision. And so I am gonna vote in favor of this, but I would have preferred to see a levy shift involved in that. I do also want to just call out a couple of people and thank them for their support throughout this process. And they work for the city of Shelton, who they work very closely with our staff here from the very, very beginning, and that's Mark Ziegler, Nola Von Nudeg, and Ryan Wheaton from the city of Shelton. They're great partners to us here at the county, and even though we changed our position on using the levy shift at the time, I do thank them for working with us up until the very end, and think that they deserve a tip of the hat and gratitude for everything that they've been able to help us with through this process.
Commissioner, I wholeheartedly agree with you, because there was a point where they didn't have to work with us. They were choosing to, and that was pretty wonderful that they came to the table to work with us. And I want to point out also that this is a great example that even though you can disagree, you find a way to work it out. I'll be voting for this with the idea I wanted to decrease that tax, but I'll be voting for an increase in that diversion, where he's voting for the opposite, so that make sure that that's increased. And it may not be pretty to watch be made, but this is one of those situations where we find a way to work together and get it done unanimously, and I appreciate that from you also, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schutte, I do appreciate you also calling out the work of the City of Shelton staff to work with us. It was commendable. You know, having been the person that asked the City of Shelton to, and former Commissioner Olson, to consider a levy shift in the past, this was, you know, unfortunately they were maybe used to the idea. My opposition I have two oppositions to the levy shift, and that was taking that increase in tax at such a high level to the voters as well as, or to the taxpayers as well as, that's expensive money. It was 9% that we would have had to pay in addition to what we took from the road, put into our current expense, and then pay the City of Shelton 9% of whatever it was, and that's just very expensive money, and I think that would have added to our structural imbalance that Standard & Poor's was referring to, and so that's my opposition to the levy shift.
Okay, any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion carries. Moves us on to our final levy certification, which is certification of levies for all taxing districts.
Mr. Chair, I move to certify to the county assessor the amount of taxes levied for county purposes and the amount of taxes levied for each taxing district for 2018.
Is this not under a hearing process?
Oh, we did jump the gun a little bit there.
Sorry.
Okay, so we will then move to public comment on this item. For certification of all.
First
I
presentation.
thought he already briefed it.
I already briefed it.
Oh, the total certification and the total budget?
Well,
No, not the total budget, just the certification
Oh,
for
for
all
the three,
taxing
okay.
districts. Yeah, he
So
briefed
these-
briefed all three items.
So these are all the taxing districts send to us their budgets and how much they will, of their taxing authority, ask to have certified. And we as a county government have the ability to certify their own levies as well, after their vote from their own legislative bodies. And so we have the list of all of them, and there are a tremendous number of taxing districts in Mason County. As somebody says, Washington State doesn't like government, but they love their governments. So we have a tremendous number here that we are now certifying.
Okay, so with that, I'd open the public comment period. If you'd like to make comment on the third levy item, please come forward and the chair will recognize you. Okay, seeing none, close the public comment period and move to commissioner discussion and a possible motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to certify to the county assessor the amount of taxes levied for county purposes and the amount of taxes levied for each taxing district for 2018.
Second.
Moved and seconded to certify the county assessor the amount of taxes levied for county purposes and the amount of taxes levied for each taxing district for 2018. Any additional discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? And the motion carries. Okay, it moves us on to item 10.3. It's a public hearing to consider adoption of the 2018 budget for Mason County, continued from December 5th, 2017. I ask Frank to come forward and brief.
So I would like to read the resolution for the adoption of the 2018 budget. Whereas the Board of County Commissioners did meet in special session in the Commission chambers on the first Monday in December 2017 at the hour of 9 a.m. pursuant to public notice and as required by law for the purpose of adopting the budget for the year 2018. And whereas said budget was compiled on 2017 property valuations as assessed by the Mason County Assessor, and whereas the road fund budget was prepared as required by RCW 36.82.160 and the County Road Administration Board, whereas not all county departments and offices have submitted budget detail, and the Commissioners will allow all departments and offices to transfer funding between adopted salaries and benefit expenses and operating expenses without a limitation until January 31st, 2018. These budget transfers shall be made on an approved budget transfer form to the budget manager or designee utilizing a reallocation bars number. After January 31st, 2018, the budget transfer restrictions stated in Resolution 26-17 are applicable. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the 2018 budget's salary and benefits expenditure line items shall be utilized to meet obligations authorized by other portions, shall not be used for obligations authorized by other portions of the budget, and the salary and benefit expenditure line shall not be increased by other portions of the budget. However, the Commissioners will allow all departments and offices to transfer funding between adopted salary and benefits expenses and operating expenses without a limitation again until January 31st, 2018. These budget transfers shall be made on an approved budget transfer form to the budget manager or designee utilizing a reallocation bars number. After January 31st, 2018, the budget transfer restrictions stated in Resolution 26-17 are applicable. No additions to staff, either part or full-time, or changes in salary or classifications are permitted without approval of the Board of County Commissioners. Be it further resolved that the Mason County budget for 2018 is hereby adopted according to RCW 36.40.080 at the department level, with two separate totals for salaries and benefits expenditures and operating expenditures in the current expense and at the fund level for all other funds. Attachment A, which is hereby incorporated as part of this resolution. The current expense budget that is proposed for the general fund is $36,930,990, $36,930,990, and the special funds budgets are $59,585,384 for a total budget of $96,516,374.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Frank. Any questions for staff?
Frank, I don't have the revised copy of the resolution. If it's possible, while we're hearing public comment, if I could get a copy.
If we can ask, yeah, that's fine.
Okay, any questions for? We're gonna get a copy. Okay. Okay. Seeing no questions for Frank, we'll go ahead and open the public comment period. Again, if you want to make comment on item 10.3, please come forward to the podium and the chair will recognize you.
Is it too late to ask a question of Frank? Regarding the Belfair sewer system, what transfers are being planned for that in 2018?
There are transfers coming out of the .09 sales tax, rural sales tax fund, as well as transfers coming from REIT. And off the top of my head, I don't recall exactly the dollar amount, but I believe it's in the range of about $850,000.
Okay. We'll, again, if you'd like to make comment, please come forward to the podium and the chair will recognize you. Anyone? Okay.
No.
No other public.
Okay. Well, I would entertain anybody that would like to come forward and make a comment.
I'll go. Casey Salisbury, Sheriff's Office. Just covering a few. Obviously, it's been a rough year for everybody. Been a rough 11 years. I just wanted to recognize, and I'll read some comments from some other sheriffs. This last few years, I guess the disappointing piece is that what you're going to see coming up over the next year is public safety is going to be compromised, to say the least. I've been up here several times touting our boating program that was recognized as the state's best boating program. Will be virtually non-existent. We will only respond to, if there's an emergency on the water, we'll have to put a boat in and try to go. We won't have the funding for that. As recently as I think yesterday, it was recognized again, nationally recognized canine program, and it came out again yesterday in one of the newspapers. The animal control position, you'll be on your own for dogs. Can't respond anymore. We don't have the staff to do it unless it's a criminal issue, but barking dogs, those kind of things are gone. Response to your alarms will be limited to none because we won't have the staffing to be out to answer all of those. It'll be very difficult. The undersheriff and I will be meeting with our regional partners to, I guess, continue to ask for help that we asked for years before I came here. When I was at Thurston, we came over here all the time to assist Mason County because they were so behind the 8 ball. We're going to have to go back and talk to our regional partners about the things that we work on with them and our inability to support them, but ask for their support of us. During this last number of years, when we reached staffing levels that we at least had enough people to fill the road slots, our crime rates actually came down for the first time in many, many years and began to stabilize. Now we're going to go back to, well before when I was here, to 2002 standards, and that's the level of service we will have because that's the level of staffing we'll have. Those folks this last year, and some that are considering it now, I thank them. We had a number of people this last year recognize that the young people that we have hired, ours were finishing 1, 2, or 3 in the academy, tops in the entire state of Washington. And we had a number of people this year feel that they could make an early exit retirement in order to try to save those others' jobs, which they at least up till this time have. We have a couple others that are now sitting down with me considering how they can figure out how they may be able to retire so that we don't lose the top police officers in the state of Washington. I'm going to take a little bit different stand. I know how this usually goes, but I'm going to take a little bit different stand with Commissioner Netherland. The people did speak, and the people did speak loudly about going out for another tax. Most of you know that I sat by silently on that I didn't want to be in a compromising position like some others got into this year speaking out on something at public meetings. But here's what I believe. The people spoke because they had no idea where the money was going. I have kids, you know, I mean, they're just like I was when I was a kid. Hey, Dad, I need some more money. Well, I want to know what it's going for. When you go down to the bank to buy a new car, they just don't hand you whatever the amount is, 40, 50,000, whatever a car is nowadays. I haven't bought one for a number of years. They just don't hand it to you without knowing if you have the money to pay for it, and those kind of things. I don't think people are going to vote on anything, and I don't think they ever will until they know exactly where their money's going. So I differ greatly on that. I think that if it would have been directed and known where it was going and what it was going to be spent on, I think that people would have voted otherwise, because numerous people told me that if it was going for criminal justice, and they knew it would be there. I also want to credit, I don't know if they're still out there, Ryan Wheaton, Chief Moody. It's been a rough year for us. I met Darren when he put into Chief Moody, when he put in to become our chief. I fully supported him in hearing him going through the process. I know that Chief Moody's no different than the rest of us that are in this business. Kind of like Labrador retrievers, you know how to go get the ball every time, no matter what. And whether you come from California or you're living here in Washington or from Mason County, you know as a police officer what your job is, and you go do that. The last few days, and recent these budget cuts and hitting us, and then recently as late afternoon yesterday being cut again, we had to warn them a number of months ago that our jail rates would be going up, and we don't even know if we're going to be able to hold City of Shelton inmates. And I know that angered Darren. It wasn't particularly at me, our chief. It was frustrating for all of us in law enforcement that can't get somebody into the jail. It's particularly harmful to the city, and I'm sorry for that. Not my area on that. I have a couple things. One of them, if you listened to the radio yesterday, I read a piece off that. I'll read you something today that goes along with this piece about asking people for money and taxes. I'll tell you who wrote it after I get done reading it. It says, across America, local and state governments continue to reel from economic downturn. Costs are outstripping revenues, and the taxpayers have made it clear that they will not continue to pay more and more for government. The law enforcement community and the criminal justice system being hit the hardest. Politics often trump the real priorities of government, and many of us find ourselves fighting publicly to maintain basic public services. At the extreme, our sheriffs have found themselves in the untenable position of having to provide police services with no additional revenue. It was written by Dr. Sotheby and Sheriff Susan Rohr, former sheriff of King County and now the director of the Washington State Training Commission. It goes on to say a lot of other things that support what we've talked about over the last years. I'll read one more. This is written by Sheriff Paul Pastor, Dr. Paul Pastor, addressing this very issue. Paul lost 15 deputy sheriffs in his office, and these are the comments by Pierce County. We've lost, not just deputies, but in our office, we've lost equally as many. Imagine the difference between us and Pierce. Pastor called for elected officials to recognize that public safety is the foundation for all sorts of things in society, such as good businesses, good real estate, and good health care, to name a few. Without public safety, you don't get good shopping, good schools, and good transportation, he noted. Less is less. Don't expect to cut my budget and resources and to get more. Make up your mind. Stop pretending you can have both. Crime is going up and will continue to go up. At the same time, budgets are going down. This is what Sheriff Pastor related to the commission after he was cut 15 out of his office. We have had some really great years when we just got just enough people to make a schedule work. Coming in here at a time when I worked for another agency and continued to be asked as a lieutenant from there to back Mason County. And I chose to come over here because I felt at home was a better place for me to be to try to correct that. And I want to thank the command staff and the people that we brought in over the years to bring that down. I don't know what the shape of the future is for the safety of the citizens of of Mason County. What I will tell you is that I know that each one of the people that remain for us, I refer back to all of them are like the Labrador Retrievers. They just know how to get the ball. And every time you throw it out in the water, they're going to keep going. They're going to keep going. And they're going to keep going until you drown them. And unfortunately, that's what we started to do. Thank you for the support over the last number of years. Thank the recent person that walked in yesterday and set a very large check on my desk and said, spend it for whatever you need. I don't know how much it will help. We've had tremendous citizen support. And I will say once again that if that tax had went through and been consulted on by us and been in support of criminal justice system, not just the sheriff's office, but truly in support of the criminal justice system, I believe it would have passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Commissioners, my name is Travis Adams, as you know. Thank you for letting me come up here and talk to you and the folks here. I've kind of always been an inside person at the Sheriff's Office, worked operations for many, many years. This year I kind of got thrown into the arena to start speaking with all the commissioners. On one hand, I'd like to thank you for taking the opportunity. I had the opportunity to meet with all the commissioners numerous times over the last 6 weeks or so. Numerous conversations with Mr. Pinter going over the budget operations, and I appreciate all the conversations that we've had. And you guys have enlightened me a lot on your positions and where you come from. On the flip side, because I'm probably going to be talking to you all again starting in January when this process all starts over again, I want to stress one thing that I've found having done this for the first time this year. The budgeting process here and how we communicate sucks. That's the technical term. It's awful. There is absolutely no reason why we should be having these conversations in the last couple of weeks of the year. I had numerous meetings over and over again, talking with each of the commissioners, with Mr. Pinter, trying to understand what the priorities were, how we were going to determine what the funding levels were going to be. Up till yesterday, we had money cut from our budget that we thought was all taken care of. We thought we understood where we were at, and now all of a sudden, because of this process that absolutely sucks, we have to completely try and figure out what we're going to do with our personnel again and what we're going to do with our operations. So I would implore you, as we go into next year, I want to continue with the conversations. I want to continue with trying to figure out what the priorities of government are going to be here in Mason County, not just for the sheriff's office, but for every department and every elected, so that we know what the plan is, so that we are not changing numbers and changing positions and making all these last minute changes right at the end of the year when we're being asked to provide information on what our staffing levels are going to be and where our wages and benefits are going to be, when we're having cuts made and changes made in the last week, 2 weeks before the end of the year. How are we supposed to do that effectively with an organization that has 90 to 100 people, and we have major cuts that we have to try and figure out how we're going to deal with? So I appreciate all the time that you spent. I hope that we have the opportunity to do that again moving forward. But I am asking you, as somebody who's new to this process and felt like this year just really sucked bad with the process, I keep using that technical term, I know, but I think it makes the point, that we figured this out much earlier in the year. We start the process at the beginning of the year so that when we get to this point in the year, we know where we're at. So thank you. Appreciate the time. I hope that resonated with some of the other folks in here, and I look forward to starting again next year.
Thank you. Any other comment?
Just have a few comments. Under Sheriff Jim Barrett, I'm going to not even sell it as softly as Travis did. 33 years of military service, county government service. This process has been the most dysfunctional and disorganized, and we knew it was coming, and we never took the time to engage a lot of the smart people in a collective mindset to get to the problems. sound and reasonable solutions were offered up to meet the exact issues that were raised by Mr. Davis, by Ms. Hershey, to address the concerns the board has about building reserves, to stabilize basic county services. We have well over 55,000 people in the county, and yet we make decisions as if we have to cater to the city needs more than the county needs. I'm disappointed because early in the year, we said if we're going to do this, start having meetings early in the year. Start coming up with plans. And why we said that early in the year, as it seems like I've said for 11 years now, we still don't have a vision. We still don't have a mission. There aren't clearly stated goals and objectives, performance measures. You've expected in previous years your department heads and elected officials to deliver those things as part of our budgetary process, and yet we have still not seen anything from the board in which to guide, govern, or plan around for the future to meet not only your goals for county solvency and the direction you want to go, but for the individual offices to meet with you. We run around like Lord of the Flies till the last second, hoping something will be done. And in the meantime, I've got at least 4 to 5 people sitting in that office on pins and needles waiting. And as of yesterday, as Travis said, another 150, then an ER&R rate sent this morning, which was another adjustment. No stability whatsoever, no confidence. I know the board has planned on having committees put together for government stability. Well, it seems like when you go and you shake your hands and you try to work, and we used other people to try and come to a different conclusion, that you walk away and you get slapped in the back of the head. I would ask that you folks, at the beginning of the year, sit down and start establishing where you want this county to go. What is the mission? Not the old stuff that's been up there for 20 plus years that I've been here. But where are we going with the changing times, the demands, the expectations? We briefed yesterday in an executive session on a very specific issue related to some significant things that are going on in this county. And then in a meeting, we turn around and $150,000 directly related to those things is reduced from our budget, but you can come back with a supplemental request. Ryan Sperling and other members went up and created a partnership with the North Mason School District. They agreed to come up with another $80,000 to create a school resource officer. A tentative agreement which will last for 4 years at $80,000 per year for 4 years. That was an opportunity to save a position by moving them into that funding. A position the citizens here have already invested $170,000 to train, hire, and put on the road. The message yesterday was, well, come back next year for a supplemental and we'll think about it. Well, that means we have to lay somebody off that we've just trained to turn around and try and get them back on the street again. And you know, it takes at least 9 months to a year to train somebody. How do we create partnerships that create confidence, stability, trust moving forward? So I'm still not sure why we would do that, lay somebody off only to say come back next year when the funding exists from an outside entity through partnerships. So I don't know what the plan is, but I know there is no plan. And the board is supposed to lead, guide, mentor, coach, direct other elected officials to come to a certain outcome with common goals, but we don't know what they are. We don't know how to plan for them. And you can't say on December 9th of 2014 that a letter drafted by your office and your staff outlined what you had done in the budgeting process with a paragraph at the bottom that clearly stated, we know we will be $2.1 million unsustainable, and for 3 years from a collective large number, big dollar items, no strategic plan was developed to meet what you already knew was a liability 3 years ago. And at the last minute this year, we tossed together something to throw on a ballot without a collective, cohesive strategy with lots of planning to put in place to have that done. to Ms. Hershey's comments about the road diversion and traffic policing. In fact, the road diversion started significantly in 2007 when the 4 counties that had traffic policing done by the State Patrol was going to be eliminated. That was created in 2007. Post-recession years, we started talking levy shifts to stabilize. And I would encourage people, if you want to truly understand levy shifts, go out and look at counties that are our size, that we use for comparable salaries and wages, that we base how we're governing things. Look at how they conduct what is submitted to roads and what is submitted to current expense as a function or percentage of their budget. And you'll find out we're still not anywhere near those other counties. Not the King counties, not the Kitsap counties, not the Thurston counties. Look at the ones that we compare with. Start to develop plans and strategies. You've got a lot of smart people in this county and a lot of good leaders, and you are not tapping into their abilities. And I think the sheriff summed it up. Set aside politics, set aside personal issues, and do what's right by the citizens.
Thank you. Any additional comment?
I'm Teresa Eric, Chief Admin Deputy for the Sheriff. I have been here some time. I worked with the League in 2010 when we did the budget study and how the county is financed. And I have seen how the budget process has changed over the years, and I do know that there are a lot of wonderful, intelligent citizens that have worked on committees to put proposals together regarding our criminal justice system, not just the sheriff's office, but all, and their objectives and priorities for all the county. But what I have not seen happen is the sheriff, who has we had 109 people to start the year. We had 109, now I don't know how many, we have 90, maybe 16, 18 less. All the people that he has, and that's about twice as many as the road department, all their contracts are negotiated by the commission. The almost $1 million in inmate costs that we have of our, I don't know what it is now, I think it's $12 million. It was $14.7 last year. We have a $1.6 million less to start the year, and I think it's $2.5 million less than last year. All the contracts for the deputies were negotiated and settled in 14, and that's about $200,000 a year. And all the negotiations for the other jail corrections deputies and support services were also negotiated by the commission. So even though we absorbed all the increases and the salaries and benefits, and the $1 million in inmate costs were also negotiated in contracts that the commission signs, and there's another $1 million in ER&R rates and MACECOM rates and software systems that we cannot negotiate. So we're working with a budget that everything is already predetermined, and the only thing we have is to reduction of staff. And by the time we get these people and they go to other places, they're not going to come back if they know that they're not going to continue to have a job, because the other agencies that are waiting for us to let them go because they're really good are not doing this in the same manner. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any additional comment from the public? Okay, seeing no additional comment from the public, I'm going to close the public comment period and then move to commissioner discussion and a possible motion.
I'll begin. I think it's really telling that there was very little public comment, but tremendous amount of comment from an office that's asking us to work together while insulting us. That's a pretty interesting way to ask for that. I could go line by line, item by item of all the issues that were thrown at us here at the podium, but I won't. But I do want to just say those contracts were not negotiated, they were arbitrated. We couldn't come to an agreement, and they were brought to an arbitration board. And I got to tell you, you don't get everything you want in an arbitration. And you just got to get to an agreement, or somebody brings to you what that agreement is. When I started, the budget of the sheriff's office was $8 million, $8.4 million. We're considering a $12.3 million budget. Did what we could. Did what we could. That's a pretty significant increase. If you want to talk about working together, when we ask people when they submit their budgets to please include a 17.3% decrease and they don't, how are you supposed to work together? It was tough, and maybe it wasn't as pretty as people want, but I got to tell you, I've never seen a budget process that was pretty, ever. State legislature on down, Congress on down. This is just the way it is. I want to thank this commission for working together. Each one of us rescinded from our positions on certain aspects of this budget we're considering right now. But this is a large and complicated budget, and it's very difficult to have it as smooth as people may want it. And people are going to have to give in on those pieces. It's very easy for one or two people to stand up and say, this is what you ought to do. But we have 3 opinions we have to bring to one, and that is tough. On the issues, I want to thank this commission for considering and adding back the staff member in the district court. My purposes were not to create more revenue. It was because there was a very distinct possibility that people with traffic infractions would get off without having to deal with them. So I just wanted to put that one clear. You're hearing things all along, and you just want to try to address them. Didn't want to raise the taxes of the people via a levy shift. I thank the city for considering working with us on that and prorating down their Metropolitan Park District, but not at a cost of 9%. That's just not, I think, the way we could have done that. Nobody's going to be happy with this budget, but I'm very happy with the way the 3 of us worked together and the open conversations that were there, and appreciated each one of the elected officials coming to us and telling us the impact so that I could go out and talk to the citizens about what the impacts were. And I got to tell you, people said over and over and over again, golly, that's too bad, but Commissioner, cut that budget. Golly, that's too bad, but cut that budget. Now, I'm not saying I talked to every citizen, but I didn't hear what we were told was the reason people voted no. They just didn't want to see the tax increase. I'd be willing to put another one on the ballot. I really would. People are going to see an effection of services or decrease in services all around, not just in one department, all around. And maybe that will be the reality that says, okay, yeah, they do need more revenue. But for now, I have to support the budget as presented. And thank again for working with us, all of us together.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any additional comments?
A few clarifications. Start off right away with the idea of working together. You know, you can argue, you can fight, but you still get down, you're supposed to work together. It's a little hard to work together when you don't even turn your budget in with the rest of them because you refuse to do it in the manner that is requested by the department, not us, that has a requirement in how you turn it in, but you decide you want to fight them. You want to fight everybody. People in this community have no idea of the intimidation that has been placed on me over the last 1.5 years, 2 years. None. I've had to go to the prosecuting attorney for help at different points. It's been terrible. I've wanted to resign, but I don't know how to run. I'm just not built that way, but I want to. This job is definitely a regretful job that you have to even be a part of it. But the problem I have is I read all these budgets and I go over every single inch of it. When we went ahead and we went out to the public for a vote, at the time I actually asked for a criminal justice one and it did not go through because it was the needs in other departments. I can't disagree with that. The problem is when I went out there, I couldn't go and ask people to support it. One of the reasons why I could not ask them to support that is, although some departments were completely gutted over the years, as we've had our increases, Other departments were not. Some departments can hardly run. Other departments have room to cut. Now, everybody has had to cut, but some departments did not. Now, in the public, we come out there and we say we have this much $1 million budget that turns out to be $1.5 million short, put it on a county website to get people all riled up and say you're going to lay off 10 people, a layoff that never occurred, never had to occur. As we talk now, and we hear that we're going to do this, we're going to cut that, we're going to cut this. Again, as I said, I've done my homework. That's the problem. How do I go out to the public and say that this department alone does not need to be cut when they are the largest of our departments? There's arguments here on the radio, and I want to point out, if you guys are watching these things, they've tried to call me out for the last year and a half, keep me and just fight with me separately because it's easier that way on an intimidation factor. If you notice on the radio and stuff like that, I don't even go on there. I don't even defend myself there. Just let them kick the heck out of me. Okay, that's fine, because the problem I have is I have the numbers, and I have no choice. Whether I'm even intimidated or not, I still have no choice. I'm supposed to do my job. You know, I get told yesterday that there is no, that they've never said that they were going to increase the beds to 100, or they would increase the ability to house inmates up to 144. And I tried to explain that that's not accurate. It's in the minutes. When we gave money to expand the jail, it was supposed to open to 144. There's revenue involved here. We had a short fund of revenue last year. And some of that revenue was SWIFT and certain funds that were promised to us in a budget, but also promised to us a few years ago when we decided to spend money on expanding the jail. I personally think it's part of the intimidation, and I think it's the fear factor for the public. What's the old expression? When the levee fails, the buses stop rolling. I was told, we got a phone call, and it's on our minutes again, when we were not going to give as big a raise to one specific elected official, that they would drop the jail on us, they would quit the SWIFT and certain, they would do all these things. Sadly for me, I didn't believe him as much, but that was a huge hit on our budget when that doesn't happen. That jail in particular, as you're hearing how overcrowded it is and how we have 80, and I want you to understand, we have not laid off a single correction officer during that last cut either. We have more corrections officers now than we had when we housed 151 that year. That was the most that I could see on the record that we've housed in that one jail. Historically, we've been running about 132. That's our average. So then we go through the expansion process. We're supposed to change it from 124, because even though we had 132, 124 was the number, 122, up to 144. That's why we expended the money. And we were told that SWIFT and certain funds would go up, by the way, if we did that. They told us that we go from the 500,000 we're collecting that year, that we could maybe do 750. That's how we were going to pay for these things when we went out for these bonds. But after all the battles and everything, when it opened, after the new construction, did we open to the 121 that we started? Did we open to the 144 capacity that we were promised? No, we opened to 94. And I think it's because of the battles. Then it dropped down. Now we're down to 80. And I personally think it's because of the battles. And although they tell me I can't have an opinion on these things, I do, because I've been living it. Now the problem is, it's in our community. This hurts our community. And again, it's not like there's been a change to the negative on what we had before, the capacity to hold these people. But it's a political choice, in my opinion, that is made in order to have an impact. Just like I believe that action with the city was meant to have an impact because it comes out in the news. Reductions, first of all, increases. When you're looking at their budget, we should at least be back up to our normal, even if they went to 94, not even the 144 that they said. And I have, anybody that wants to challenge it again, I have the minutes. They even had it in their comprehensive plan that they've put in the last couple of years, saying 144 beds after the construction was over. So there should be an increase in our budget right now that we should be able to do. But there's other things. How do I look at the public and say that it's fair and it's okay when I go around to our surrounding counties and I see 3 chiefs? Okay, because we keep talking about laying off the deputies, but I see 3 chiefs in our surrounding counties, all right? Matter of fact, when I was talking about the impact and having all the officers come in here dressed up, loaded up on working time, some of them, to make us, again, in my opinion, be intimidated. I was told that when I first started that was going to happen. When I was talking to some of the other commissioners at the risk pool, they said they'd never seen anything like that. It doesn't happen in their county. Island County has 80,000 people. We have 60. Island County was telling me that they hadn't seen it. The only problem they ever had with their sheriff was when they wanted to bring on an extra chief. Well, I found that interesting. And so I asked, well, how did that go? And they said, well, we actually allowed them to have it. So currently, the reason why they allowed them to have it is because they didn't have an undersheriff. I said, oh, so how many do you have? Well, they have 3. And no undersheriff. Okay? Kitsap County has 200,000 people. We have 60. Kitsap County has 3 chiefs. Pierce County has 800,000 people. They have 3 chiefs. Mason County has 5 and an undersheriff. How do I look at the public and say that that's okay? You read if any of you read the article in the past that showed the tanks. Wonderful thing to have. 3 counties in the state, according to that article, have those tanks. We have 2 of them. At some point, you have to answer to the people on these things. And when I'm looking at that and I see the cost like that, and I wrote down the numbers where not one single deputy has to be removed if that's what they choose. But it's up to them because we have bottom line authority. You know, our overtime, to me, has been a huge factor. If I looked at you in the public and said we had a $200,000 overtime budget, would you think that's excessive? How about a $300,000? How about a $400,000? How about a $500,000? How about a $780,000 overtime? At some point, it's the responsibility of the elected official to find a way to work within the means they have and not let that happen. Out of our top 50 highest paid county employees last year, 41 of them was from the Sheriff's Department. 41. Now, not all of those were supposed to be. It's just through an overtime. Out of our top 5 highest paid county employees, not counting the 2 main judges because half of theirs is covered by the state, the judge, prosecuting attorney, and 3 deputies. $72,000 a year deputy making $127,000 a year. At some point, somebody's supposed to take control over this. So how do I look at the community and say, oh, it's okay? Because I'm getting yelled at the most, because I'm afraid of them? Because yes, I am afraid of them. But what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to put my tail between my legs and go home? And they do make me afraid. But I have no choice. I'll do my job. So when it comes to being fair and being nice, boy, I sure would appreciate it if there was some fairness and there was some way of treating people with respect. I've held a lot of this in. I usually only respond when being attacked, but today's the day of the budget. We're lined up again, one after another. And usually it's just me, but this time it was spread out a little bit, and I appreciate that. But I got to tell you, even when we didn't give that elected official, the sheriff, I'm going to say it here, that raise, we got hit with a public records request for anything that had to do with wages, negotiations, and the like. That cost this county $100,000 as an intimidation mode. We didn't give in. We did to some point because we ended up giving him a raise, but not as big as was wanted. You can't do business that way, folks. Eventually, somebody has to say something, and I have to say something now. So as I get my rear end kicked, I wasn't put into this position to be loved. I was put in to do a job, and I'll do my job. If I end up getting shoved out, what am I supposed to do? That's the only thing I can ask. What would you do? Would you run away, or would you stand up and do what you're supposed to do? So again, their budget has been increased greatly over the years at the expense of the others. I know because I did it. It's my fault. I'll take responsibility for it. I wanted those 8 extra police officers on the street. I wanted those 6 extra corrections officers. It was me, as other ones got in fights with me as I fought to get it. But at some point, you come back with no fingers and you start realizing that you're doing wrong, especially when you're taking and crushing another department. So that's where I tried to stop, especially this year. Commissioner Drexler made the comment of working together, because I'm going to be voting in favor of this budget. I want to put that out, because we did work together. I believe that we should be taking a lot of this money, putting it to our ending fund to protect us from any type of collapse on our bond ratings and our credit ratings this next year. That's my belief. Everybody has their different beliefs. With that, I have, my finished product is about $35.5 million. Commissioner Jeffries was about 65 and a half. Commissioner Schutte was about 75, or I'm sorry, 35 and a half, $37.5 million was our thing. We negotiated out, and I got some of the stuff that I had asked for, and I didn't get some of the stuff that I wanted. They put stuff in there I definitely disagreed with, but they agreed with some of the stuff for me that they disagreed with. So I'm going to be voting in favor of this budget because we did work hard together to put something the best we can do with what we had. And I think it's important that the commission stand together. As a matter of fact, if we did start to stand together from here on out, a lot of these things wouldn't be happening to us. If we could find a way to be a team even as a commission, we would do everybody in this county a service. But these commissioners worked really hard, and we came up with the best that I think could be done. So with great thanks, I will be supporting this budget as well.
Thank you. Well, how do you follow that, right? I do appreciate the work and effort put forward by Commissioners Netherland and Drexler throughout this process. I've been involved in a number of budgets, most of them, all of them prior to this on the state level, which is a very different process than what counties and local governments have to go through. And so it's rightly so a much more public process. There's a lot more public participation. There's a lot more engagement, I think, on the local level, and that's a good thing. That's part of the reason I wanted to get out of Olympia, is that local government is really where the rubber meets the road and really engages people in a much more effective way. And so my thanks to them for their work throughout this process. My thanks also to our staff who've had to endure a number of changes over the last several months leading up to yesterday as well. One of the things that I used to do when I worked in the legislature and it would be budget time was I would sit down and I would do the good, the bad, and the ugly of the budget. And every budget that you work on, every budget that gets adopted has good, has bad, and has some ugly. And I jotted down some notes, and I'm gonna go through it, and then and then we'll kind of work through the process and hopefully get to a motion here soon. But some of the good things that I saw through this budget process was we did work together to increase the traffic diversion for traffic policing. I think that's a positive thing. I know that was a difficult thing for us to work through. I think that was positive. One of the other things, and this has come up, I appreciate how in tune people are now with our bond rating. The bond rating is a serious issue for sure. We have time to correct it. I don't think I don't want to reduce how serious it is in any way, diminish how serious it is in any way, because it is a very serious thing. But I also don't want us to be breathless about it. I think we have time and we have options in order to fix it. One of those things that will help us in that regard is we're no longer dipping into our reserves in the budget in order to make things work out and pencil out. So I think that's a good thing that will help us in a number of ways. The other thing, I'm pleased that we were able to come to some sort of an agreement on a citizen-led budget sustainability committee. Regardless of the vote on today's budget, we know we already had significant cuts in July. We know that we're going to see a reduction in the budget that's adopted today ultimately. I think it's important for us to continue to engage people in the community in the process, bring them in, have them learn about local government and how they budget and how they're able to generate revenue and the limitations that we have. And so I think that's a very good thing. Now on to the bad. One of the things, and I referenced this earlier in my remarks about the levy shift and when we were doing the levy certification, I do believe that we should have utilized the bank capacity in the roads to help stabilize the budget for next year, for 2018. And that's simply to allow there to be a longer, more thoughtful process on how to reduce costs over time. When we adopted the amended resolution for our reserve policy, we gave ourselves 5 years in order to build back those reserves to the 12 to 15% level. I think it would have been prudent to stabilize things for 2018, as difficult as painful as that might be to consider the bank capacity in roads, I think it would have been prudent to stabilize things for next year, invite the citizenry in, go through the process with them. Maybe they come in and look and say, hey, here's some other areas that you should be looking to cut. Or, on the other side of that, here are some revenue options that we think we can support, that the county should put on a ballot, and that we think we can have a discussion with the community on. So in that regard, I'm disappointed we didn't use that. I think another area that is in the bad for this budget that I believe the commissioners would agree with is we are going to see a reduction in services and hours and level of service from the various offices. The criminal justice system is unique in that it can't reduce its hours. It doesn't choose its caseload. A lot of times criminals find their way in despite our best efforts. But in those other areas of Mason County government that can reduce their hours, they're doing that, and that's not a good thing for our public. I recognize that, and so I think that falls under the bad category. One of the other things that this budget doesn't address that is a big issue for me, and I'm going to go ahead and touch the third rail. I guess that's part of my job too. Is we're again for a second year in a row not addressing our fleet issues in the sheriff's office. I know that was the conversation that we had a number of times with the commission. There's some disagreement on the level at which these vehicles ought to be replaced and how to go about paying for them, but I am disappointed to see that that's not part of the final budget as well. On to the ugly. I think my concern, last week I did hop on the radio. Commissioner Drexler was on the radio as well. One of the questions that we were asked on the radio was, do you think Mason County has hit rock bottom? Now, that's a very politically loaded question. It's one that, anybody would probably be kind of loath to answer. But I think our best days are ahead of us, regardless of the outcome here. I'm an optimist. And I do think that we have a lot going for us. That being said, I have serious concerns with this budget and how it provides for the most vulnerable members of our community. Just a couple of notes that I have. I had a budget proposal that would have funded public defense at a higher rate. That's a constitutionally mandated service that we provide. I think that's one of those liabilities that we should be funding first and funding as fully as we can. And I think we missed an opportunity to take care of that in this budget, and so that really concerns me. One of the other issues that concerns me is the potential loss of the family law facilitator in Superior Court. We have very high rates of dependency in the county. I know people that are coming in on the civil side in particular in Superior Court rely on this service in order to manage their forms and get through the process and make sure that they're doing things appropriately. And I have a concern that at the funding level that Superior Court has been put forward at here, that those services may not be able to continue to the level that I think they ought to. And I think the other issue, and this was a hotly debated one yesterday afternoon for those of you who were in attendance at our budget workshop, but we need to have a serious conversation around how we tackle the mental health issues in our community. We can't say it enough. Commissioner Drexler does wonderful work on behalf of the county with the Behavioral Health Organization, and has been a very important part of getting additional resources and funding into the county. However, we continue to have, I think, a major bottleneck in our services when it comes to the jail. I had a budget that added additional funding for mental health services in the jail. That was removed. That doesn't remove the need to address that problem, though. It just reduces the tools in which we have to address it. So those are some of my concerns regarding that. One of the other things is, I always wonder if I think it was irresponsible to spend at the rate we were spending previously. And I heard some admissions here to that effect, and I appreciate that. My concern is that it may be equally as irresponsible to cut just as fast, if not faster, without realizing the full impact of the cuts that we did in July. And so that's the battle that I've had within myself over the past week in particular, maybe a little bit longer since the change in the levy certification and moving forward with road capacity and so on and so forth. And so my real concern is that we may be penny wise and pound foolish with this budget. I said last week on that same radio interview, I would sit down and look at the final product, and I would determine whether or not that budget fell in line with what I believe the priorities ought to be for the county and where they align with my own values and my own approach to governing. I am going to vote no on the budget today, and that is not an indication of where I think we did good work, because I think we did some good work in the budget. I'm going to hold out for better in 2018, and I think we can get there. And certainly, again, do appreciate the efforts of both of my colleagues here on the commission. And I hope that there are enough people in 2018 who are going to be willing to meet us in the middle to have those important conversations about long term. So those are my thoughts on the 2018 budget. And with that, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the 2018 budget in the total amount of $96,516,374.
I'll second.
The current the current expense is $36,930,990, and the total other funds are $59,585,384.
And I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the 2018 budget in the total amount of $96,516,374. The current expense is $36,930,990, and total other funds are $59,585,384. Any additional discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. The mental health, I need to verify though, when we had our meeting yesterday, the mental health tax, the $150,000 that we decided not to put in was not for the nursing, correct? It was because they are going to do training with it, but we don't have a training structure set up or to make sure that those funds can be used for that, so that's why we put that in the next year, right?
Correct. The jails, inmates in the jails will receive $150,000 more mental health services in the jail.
And we're looking at the other $150,000 in the next year, not this year, because there is no structure. We need to make sure that that money could actually be used for that specific purpose. So we were going to address that in the next year.
With a written proposal brought to the commission, I would very strongly consider providing $150,000 of our local mental health tax for crisis intervention training for the jail staff. I'd be willing also, with a written proposal showing how it would be done, consider the same type of training for the line staff on the patrol.
So that cut shouldn't have any effect on how many employees you have or anything. That's stuff for training. Also, the $85,000, I want a clarification. One of the reasons why I did not include that in the budget is we actually don't have a contract yet. Is that accurate?
For the
$85,000 from the school district, it's in the works, but there is no
never
contract.
saw a contract.
So there's no contract to put into the budget. So I wanted to make that part clear. And I did want to ask you, Commissioner, because I was a little surprised on this, because we all work so hard together, and I actually moved up in order for you to do it. Are you not voting for this because we're not taking the 10% tax increase and we're not increasing the budget enough?
I'm not voting for it because I don't believe we used all the tools at our disposal. I think I outlined pretty clearly where my concerns were with the budget. I did not dispute the work that was done on it. I think I was pretty clear in where I stood.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any additional discussion?
No.
Okay. Hearing no additional discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. And the motion carries. Okay, and with that, we can move to item number 11, our board reports and calendar. Commissioner Drexler, if you could get us started, I will go second, and then Commissioner Netherland can finish us off.
Get my calendar up. Let's see, following the commission meeting last week, we had a budget workshop, agenda setting meeting with Mason Transit Authority, and Commissioner Netherland and I both attended a John L. Scott Belfair Christmas party. I left town for We're still in session,
Still?
ma'am.
Sorry.
Left town to visit my ailing mother into Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We had briefings yesterday, budget workshop, and following today's meeting, I will have a Mason Transit Authority meeting at 4 o'clock. Wednesday, I'll have the Lewis Mason Thurston Area Agency on Aging meeting. And then I have a very light schedule, no commission work unless something else comes up, until after Christmas.
Thank you.
Budget workshops, MRT graduation, wonderful. We both attended that. Pretty emotional, just in a way that it gives you hope. And I started out again as one of those that was not a fan of it, but I have to admit, when you watch it and you see it, you see the successes, you learn a lot. That same Christmas party, I had my EDC retreat also. I ended up with phone calls and stuff with, first with the chief of Shelton, and then with the chief and Ryan Wheaton, sorry about that. When that notice was dropped on them, they were pretty upset, as you can imagine, so I'm sure they probably reached out to everybody, but I ended up on the phone with them for a while over that stuff. West Sound Alliance meetings, briefings, budget workshops. I think do we have an MTA meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a Mason Transit Authority meeting, a hiring committee meeting. I have other things that are set up, because there are other, right now I seem to be a very wanted person when it comes to developers and some of the things going on, and I love that because I keep seeing some of the things that are coming on the horizon. I wish I could disclose to people, and as soon as I can, believe me, I will, because I think it's wonderful for us. It'll help us with our budget as it goes forward, and other than that, thank you for the hard work, commissioners. And we have our holiday break.
Thank you. Yeah, so I also attended the MRT graduation with Commissioner Netherland, and he couldn't have been more right when he said how emotional of an experience that those tend to be. It's a great service that we have here in the county, and we talked a little bit about it earlier when Jeff was recognized for his years of service to the county, but certainly all the staff over in the courts that make that happen. It's always good, I think, Commissioner, you might agree, always good to refocus and gain some additional perspective. After that, I had a MACECOM board meeting, just a lot of the end of the year tie-up items there. And then I got a chance to spend time with the Port of Hoodsport last week as well, talk about some of the EDC issues. They had raised some concerns about the EDC process that I was able to go and meet with them, along with Kristen Masteller from PUD1 and Jennifer from the EDC as well. And I think we have a better understanding now of their concerns. And once we get the decision at that point was to come back in January and have a better to work with them a little bit more on their needs and how the EDC can work with them. And so I think it was a very productive meeting. Also attended the Hood Canal Coordinating Council meeting that afternoon up in Silverdale. Again, a lot of tying up at the end of the year. We did have a conversation about the budget outlook for the Coordinating Council, given the continued impasse with the state capital budget, and so they're working very hard. We will be fine through March and could potentially make it through June if capital budget isn't passed this session, but beyond June is when things get a little murky, and so we'll have to continue to monitor that as well. One last item from last week that was more fun than it was work was it really highlights the generosity of the employees here in Mason County. Was they had their first annual cookie contest. I, along with Tim over here, we were guest judges and went through. And I have a newfound respect for the people on TV that have to do that job and judging competitions and that kind of thing. And so it's not as easy as it looks. But Tim and I somehow managed. But the important part was they also raised a lot of money for local charity with their bake sale, and so just highlights the generosity of the folks that work for the commission, work for the county. This afternoon, I'll be attending the Mason Transit Authority meeting as well, and then have a meeting with staff tomorrow, and then out for the holidays, and look forward to seeing everybody back in January.
By the way, this is a face of jealousy. I wish I could eat those cookies that have been there.
Oh, man.
That would have been awesome.
You know,
I heard it was pretty
you
awesome
just
too.
kind of, you're up, and then you crash.
Yeah.
So, but no, it was,
I can't even eat them, so I,
yeah,
but I love them.
but it was a lot of fun.
You know, you both mentioned the MRT graduation. I think we also have Harris Hartel to thank for
Oh,
that.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
he's actually brought it to the county, and it's been phenomenal.
Do you remember, Commissioner, when I first started this job, I was not a fan of those things at all. It took a while to get me converted, but he actually showed us that it can be done. It's not always just unicorns and sparkles. There's actually a positive effect and a lasting effect that can occur when it's done right. And he sold me, and I became a fan. We moved a lot of money over the years to those in order to try and save us money.
The days of locking them up and throwing away the key as a form of deterring crime has to be rethunk.
Yeah.
It just ain't working.
When it works, because a lot of the stuff I still don't believe.
Well, it's such an interesting cross section of people in there.
Yes.
You know, it's not one age or, you know, not one particular group. I mean, it's a real cross section of the community, and so it works for those that do the work, I think, and that's I think the big takeaway there. So.
Mr. Chair, I move we adjourn.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry
I
Christmas.
second.
We're adjourned.